You ever open your front door expecting a package and instead find a toddler in Spider-Man pajamas and a sticky juice box? Yeah, that was my Tuesday. And no, the kid wasn't abandoned, just temporarily donated by my neighbor who thought I'd make a decent last-minute babysitter while she chased love across town. Let me rewind. My name is Casey. I'm 29, single, work remotely in digital marketing, and live in a cozy little duplex in a quiet neighborhood that pretends to be more serene than it really is. Next door is Trish, 31, energetic, unpredictable, and the single mom of a 3-year-old named Mason. We're friendly but not close. So when Trish knocked on my door last Thursday around 5 p.m., looking a little too put together in a red dress and heels, I knew something was up. She had that forced casual smile and Mason clinging to her leg with peanut butter on his face. "Hey Casey, I'm so sorry to do this last minute," she began, already nudging Mason forward. "But could you watch him for just like an hour? I have this thing really quick. You're home anyway, right?" I was caught off guard. I don't usually babysit. Kids are great in theory, in small supervised doses. But before I could form a full sentence, she had already deposited Mason into my arms, rattled off that he was fed and just needed some cartoons, and promised she'd be right back. And then she vanished. At first, I didn't panic. I figured she really had an errand. Maybe groceries. Maybe a doctor's appointment. I sat Mason in front of my TV with Bluey and a bowl of dry cereal and tried to keep working. 1 hour passed. Then 2. I texted her. "Hey, Mason's doing fine. Just checking in, still good for pickup soon." No response. By hour 3, I called her. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. I knocked on her door, no answer. Lights off. I even tried calling from a different number. Nada. I began to worry. Not just irritation, but actual concern. Was she okay? Had she been in an accident? Mugged? Rushed to the ER? But here's the twist. I have a friend, Jess, who works at a cafe/bar across town, about a 25-minute drive depending on traffic. She and Trish used to talk when Trish briefly dated someone from that neighborhood. On a wild hunch, I texted Jess. "Hey weird cave, you seen Trish today? She left Mason with me and disappeared." Jess, "Wait. She's here. With a guy. At the Vine. Been here since like 5:30. I stared at the message in disbelief. So while I was digging dried cereal out of my couch cushions and Googling how to change a diaper when the kid doesn't trust you, Trish was sipping cocktails in heels 10 kilometers away with some dude who probably didn't even know she had a kid. I was furious. But I waited. She didn't come back until 9:43 p.m., nearly 5 hours after she dropped him off. No apology. No explanation. Just a breezy, "Sorry. Time got away from me. Hope he wasn't too much trouble." I stood there stunned, Mason half asleep on my shoulder, while she scooped him up like nothing happened. I couldn't even form words. Not that it mattered, she was already halfway back to her house. I stewed on it for days. I told a couple of friends. Some were shocked. Others just sighed and said, "That's Trish for you." Apparently she has a history of pulling stunts like this, dropping Mason with anyone who'll open their door while she goes out for me time. But none of them had ever gotten ghosted for nearly half a day. I tried to be empathetic. I really did. Single parenting is hard. Burnout is real. But this felt less like a cry for help and more like outright manipulation. 2 days later, she texted me again. "Trish, hey, any chance you could take Mason again tomorrow around 4? Just for a bit. He really liked hanging out with you." I waited a full 5 minutes before replying. I'm not comfortable babysitting again, especially without clear communication. Last time you didn't check in for 5 hours. She didn't reply immediately, but when she did, it was nuclear. "Trish, wow. Didn't realize you were going to guilt trip me. I needed one night. You knew he was safe. I thought we were neighbors. Friends, even. You could have said no if you hated kids so much." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was too angry. But it didn't end there. That Sunday, I caught her talking to another neighbor, our mutual acquaintance Martin, right outside our units. And she knew I was home because my window was open. "She's just bitter," Trish was saying. "Some people don't get what it means to be there for others. It's sad, really. I thought she'd help a fellow woman out." Martin mumbled something polite, clearly uncomfortable. I wanted to storm out. I wanted to defend myself. But I didn't. Instead, I stewed again. Until I decided I was done stewing. I reported her. Not to the police yet, but to CPS. I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it because I started thinking, what if Mason had gotten hurt? What if he'd wandered outside? What if I hadn't been home when she dropped him off? A few days later, someone from Child Protective Services did stop by. They asked a few questions. I told the truth. I wasn't sure what would come of it. I still don't. But then came the final straw. Trish slipped a note under my door. In neat cursive writing it read, "You've ruined my life. Hope it was worth it. You'll regret this." I didn't reply. I just kept the note. Took a photo of it. And now I sleep with my doors locked and a camera pointed at my front porch. So, am I the a-holy for reporting her? I didn't mean to throw a grenade into her life. But I also didn't ask to become her free babysitter/emergency backup plan while she plays Tinder roulette across town. Mason deserves better. And frankly, so do I. After that note slid under my door, things didn't quiet down. In fact, they got louder. Figuratively and literally. That weekend, Trish started blaring music from her apartment. Not just casually loud, it was angry loud. Thumping bass at 10 a.m. on a Sunday. Mason was either at his grandparents' or being ignored because I didn't hear a peep from him. Just the sound of Alanis Morissette screaming through the walls and Trish stomping around like she was summoning a demon. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But then the passive-aggressive antics started bleeding into public space. Monday morning, I opened my trash bin outside and found it stuffed with 3 bags of what had to be her garbage. Not in the community bins me bin. She knew trash day was Tuesday, and she'd made sure it was so full that my own bag was left sitting on the sidewalk. The pettiness almost made me laugh. Almost. The next day, I got a text from Martin. We're not close, but he felt weird enough about the conversation he'd overheard to reach out. Martin, hey, not sure what's going on with you and Trish, but she's been telling people you called CPS on her out of jealousy? And that you hate kids. I stared at the message. Jealousy? Of what, her loud music, hostile notes, or unstable dating life? Martin added. Also, she said you were trying to steal Mason? That you'd acted weird with him. That's when the blood drained from my face. This wasn't just petty revenge. She was escalating. Turning people against me. Twisting things to make herself the victim. Worse, she was toying with dangerous narratives. Claiming I was obsessed with her kid? That I tried to keep him? It was sick. I hadn't even posted about it online. I'd kept the whole thing private, trying to act like an adult. But Trish was waging war while pretending to be the wrong party. So I did the only thing that made sense. I documented everything. I took screenshots of texts. Saved the voicemail she left 2 days after her note, which said, and I quote, "I hope the walls close in on you, BH." I printed out photos of the note, the garbage, even the noise complaints I'd filed with the building manager. I wasn't planning to sue or anything. But if she was going to lie, I was going to be ready. Things got really strange the following Thursday. Around 7 p.m., there was a knock on my door. Not aggressive. Just unsure. When I opened it, I saw a woman in a gray pantsuit, early 40s, holding a notepad. Behind her was a man, mid-30s, holding a large binder. "Hi. Are you Casey?" she asked. I nodded, cautious. "We're from Family Services. My name's Dana, and this is my colleague Rob. Do you have a moment?" I let them in. My hands were cold. My mind was racing. "Are you here about Trish?" I asked. They glanced at each other. Dana nodded. "Yes. And you?" For a full beat, I thought I was being investigated. Maybe Trish had made good on her threat. Reported me for something I didn't do. But then Rob spoke. "Look, we're not here to scare you. We just want to clear up a few inconsistencies. Trish submitted a complaint alleging you tried to coerce custody of her child. That you endangered him." I nearly laughed. But it came out as more of a bitter exhale. Dana raised a hand gently. "We've seen this sort of thing before. Retaliation reports. It doesn't look good on her part, especially considering the original complaint. We just need your cooperation." I showed them everything. The texts. The timeline. The message from Jess confirming Trish was out drinking while Mason was with me. I even played the voicemail, though I warned them about the language. Rob scribbled notes fast. Dana just listened. Her eyes softened the longer I spoke. "Is Mason okay?" I asked eventually. Dana looked surprised by the question. Okay. But it's good you asked. That says a lot. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd noticed things. The preschool Mason sometimes attended had filed an unrelated concern about excessive absences and erratic drop-off behavior. A staff member noted that Mason once showed up with no lunch and dried vomit on his shirt. My stomach turned. I thought Trish was just careless, irresponsible. But this was neglect. They thanked me, promised to keep me updated as much as legally allowed, and left. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. But the story doesn't end there. 3 days later, I came home from the grocery store and found someone sitting on my porch steps. A woman, early 60s, neatly dressed in slacks and a denim blouse, her hair streaked gray but well kept. She stood as I approached. "Hi, are you Casey?" I nodded, wary. She extended a hand. "I'm Linda, Trish's mom." I froze. She sighed, clearly exhausted. "Don't worry, I'm not here to yell or threaten you. I just want to talk." We sat on the porch. I didn't say much. I waited. "She told me you were a busybody, a nosy neighbor who hated kids," she said with a sad smile. "But I know my daughter." And the more I asked, the more her story fell apart. I stayed silent. Linda's face hardened. She's always been dramatic. Mason wasn't planned. But when he came, I thought she'd pull it together. I help when I can, but she pushes me away. Always has. Her father tried, but he passed 2 years ago. Since then, it's like she's been spiraling. She looked me dead in the eyes. "Thank you for reporting her." I blinked. She continued. "I know that sounds strange. But Trish won't get better if people keep enabling her. I've begged her to take parenting classes, to get therapy. But she only listens when her world collapses. And even then, only halfway." I asked the only thing I needed to ask. "Is Mason safe?" She nodded. "For now. He's staying with me. CPS let me take temporary guardianship until the investigation wraps. Trish doesn't even know yet. She's too busy sulking about being betrayed. But Mason, he's okay. He asks about you." I looked down, emotions rising fast. Linda touched my arm gently. "Would you ever want to see him? Just to say hi? You don't have to, of course. But I think it might do him good. He liked you. Felt safe with you." I said yes. Of course I said yes. 2 days later, I saw Mason again. At Linda's house. He ran to me like we'd been friends forever. No hesitation. Just arms up, face smiling, blue marker stains on his cheek. He didn't understand any of what had happened. And I didn't need him to. I just played with him for an hour, built a block tower, read the first half of Goodnight Moon, and let him fall asleep in my lap. I cried in my car afterward. Not out of sadness. Not even anger anymore. I cried because I realized how close this child had come to slipping through the cracks. Because I almost didn't say anything. Because I'd almost believed that speaking up would make me the villain. But now I knew better. I thought that might be the end of it. That after Mason curled up on my lap, his fingers tangled in the sleeve of my sweater, life would somehow settle. But I was wrong. 3 days later, Trish came knocking. Not the knock and flee passive-aggressive game she used to play. This time it was intentional. Loud. Relentless. I watched from the peephole. She looked haggard, no makeup. Hair pulled back into a tight bun. Dark circles etched beneath her eyes. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days and didn't plan to anytime soon. I didn't want to open the door. But I did. She didn't wait for permission to speak. "They took him." Her voice cracked, not out of sadness, but disbelief. As if the world had betrayed her. Not that she had failed, but that everyone else had been too cruel to understand. "They just showed up and said I wasn't stable. That I didn't have a safe plan. That I was neglectful. Do you know what that feels like?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to scream that I'd worried for that child more than she ever seemed to. But I didn't say anything. She stepped closer. "I told them you set me up. That you're obsessed with me. That you've been trying to get custody since the beginning. That you manipulated the whole thing." And there it was, a full deflection. I held her gaze. "I never wanted custody. I wanted Mason to be safe. That's all." She scoffed. "Safe? With strangers? With my mother who only shows up when there's drama? I was doing my best, Casey." "No, you weren't," I said, finally letting the anger rise. "You left him with someone who wasn't prepared. You turned your phone off. You lied. You told people I was a predator. Her mouth opened, but I wasn't done. You've made everything about you. Not once have you asked if he cried for you, or why he clung to me like he was used to being alone. Not once have you said his name in this entire conversation. You just say they, and him, and me. You don't even say Mason. She stood frozen. I waited. I wanted her to scream, to break, to admit something, anything that made her feel real. But she didn't. She just turned, muttered something I couldn't hear, and walked away. I didn't see her for 2 weeks. In that time, I started visiting Mason more regularly at Linda's. Not every day, just when invited. He was adjusting well, Linda said, though he did sometimes ask when his mommy would come home. One time he said, "Mommy said you're mad at her." I froze. Linda quickly changed the subject, but it lingered. That night, I lay awake thinking, how do you explain to a child that sometimes love isn't enough? That adults can love badly and selfishly and sometimes in ways that hurt more than they help? A week later, I got a call. It was Dana from CPS. "I'm calling with an update," she said gently. "The investigation is still ongoing, but Trish's behavior has escalated." Escalated how? I asked. She made threats. "Against you. We're working with the legal liaison to issue a protective order. It's temporary for now, but we wanted you to be aware." I went cold. Dana continued. She also attempted to remove Mason from her mother's care without authorization. Tried to pick him up during preschool hours. Security stopped her. I swallowed hard. She's been given a psychological evaluation. Nothing criminally diagnosable, but there's strong evidence of untreated mood disorders. Unfortunately, she's refusing all services. I knew what she was going to say next. At this time, the agency is pursuing permanent guardianship through the family court. Linda has already filed a petition. She's requesting you as an alternate guardian. I nearly dropped the phone. What? She believes you're a stabilizing influence. That Mason is bonded to you. That if something were to happen to Hiraj, illness, anything, you should have legal standing to care for him. I sat down slowly. "I'm not his family," I whispered. Dana paused. "Sometimes family isn't blood." I didn't give her an answer right then. I said I needed time. She understood. But time didn't make things clearer. If anything, the days that followed were a fog of questions I couldn't answer. Was I ready to be responsible for a child? Could I protect Mason from a mother who seemed intent on destruction? Would this turn into a full custody battle? What if Trish got worse? What if she came after me? And then something happened that shattered all those questions into dust. It was a Saturday. Linda had taken Mason to the park. I stopped by her place to drop off some books and toys I'd picked up at a thrift store. As I was heading back to my car, I saw something strange. My apartment door was open. My heart leapt. I approached carefully. No signs of forced entry, but the door was wide open. I stepped inside, keys clenched in my fist. The living room looked untouched. But then I saw the kitchen window was cracked open, screen pried off. Someone had climbed in. I backed out and called the police. They came within 15 minutes. Took prints. Checked for signs of theft. Nothing was missing. Nothing broken. Except one thing, a photo frame. The one on my desk with me and Mason from his 3rd birthday. Linda had printed it for me. It was simple, just him smiling with icing on his nose and me behind him, grinning like a fool. It was gone. The next day I got a letter. No return address. No stamp. Just placed carefully inside my mailbox. The handwriting was familiar. It read, "If you think I'm giving him up that easily, you don't know me at all." There was no signature. I handed it to the police. They added it to the case. And that's when I decided. I called Dana and said yes. If Mason needed me, if there was even a sliver of chance that Trish would spiral again, I needed to be ready. I didn't want to take him from his family. I didn't want to fight. But I wasn't going to let her use that little boy as a pawn in her battles with the world. She didn't deserve him. But I would earn him. That night, I sat down and started the paperwork. And in the quiet that followed, I realized something else. This hadn't been about Trish for a long time. It had always been about Mason. And I wasn't just his neighbor anymore. I was the one who answered the door when his world started falling apart. Family court isn't like it looks on TV. There are no loud objections, no slamming of fists on desks. Just muted voices, paperwork, and people trying to prove they care more than the next person. It's heartbreak wrapped in bureaucracy. The day of the hearing, Linda sat beside me in the waiting room. She looked steady but tired, like a woman who had carried too much too long. Across from us, Trish walked in 10 minutes late, clutching a manila folder and avoiding eye contact. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was limp, her cheeks pale. But her eyes, they still burned. Not with sorrow, with spite. I wanted to pity her. But then I remembered the note. The missing photo. The fact that she'd broken into my home and taken something so deeply personal, not out of nostalgia, but control. The hearing was for a guardianship decision. The state had already placed Mason in Linda's care under emergency orders. This would determine whether that placement would become permanent and whether I would be named legal alternate guardian should anything happen to Linda. Trish argued that it was all a misunderstanding. She claimed she'd never meant to leave Mason so long that night, that her phone had accidentally died. She insisted that she loved her son, and that any parenting inconsistencies were due to stress and lack of support. Her lawyer read character references, mostly vague letters from coworkers or old friends. None of them recent. None of them compelling. When it was my turn, I didn't bring a lawyer. I just brought the truth. I told them about the night she left Mason, about how she vanished, about the text, the silence, the voicemail, the CPS visit, about Mason clinging to me like I was the only safe branch in a storm. I read the note aloud, the one she left under my door. You've ruined my life. Hope it was worth it. You'll regret this. There was silence in the room after that. Then Dana from CPS took the stand. She spoke clearly, carefully. She outlined the full pattern of behavior, the neglect, the missed school days, the unstable handoffs, the attempt to take Mason without legal consent. She didn't sensationalize. She simply told the truth. At one point, Trish stood and shouted, "This is all her fault," gesturing toward me. The judge calmly asked her to sit down. And she did. But not before giving me a look that burned like acid. Linda testified next. Her voice cracked only once, when she said Mason had started sleeping through the night again. That he'd stopped wetting the bed. That he laughed more now. The judge took a recess. I sat quietly, trying not to shake. Trish stared out the window, jaw clenched. When we reconvened, the ruling was swift. Linda was granted permanent legal guardianship. I was approved as legal secondary guardian. Trish was offered supervised visitation only, contingent upon completing court-mandated parenting classes, psychological evaluations, and 6 consecutive months of documented stability. The court was clear. Mason's safety came first. And if Trish wanted to be part of his life, she had to earn her way back in. As we left the courtroom, Trish brushed past me. She didn't speak, but she whispered something as she passed Linda. "Enjoy playing, Mom. You'll break just like I did." Linda didn't flinch. Outside, the air was crisp, bright. I stood on the courthouse steps, and for the first time in months, I felt something like relief. Not victory, not joy, just quiet. Mason didn't know what had happened that day. All he knew was that I picked him up from preschool like I promised, and we went to the little park with the yellow slide he loved. He asked me to push him higher on the swing. I did. "Are you gonna be there tomorrow too?" he asked between giggles. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "I will." 2 months passed. Trish didn't contact us. Not through lawyers. Not through the court. Not through social media. She vanished as completely as she had the night she left Mason on my doorstep. CPS tried to follow up with her several times. She missed every scheduled meeting. We heard rumors she moved in with a cousin across the state. That she was starting over. That she told people the courts had stolen her son. But we didn't dwell on that. We focused on Mason. He started calling Linda Grandma again. Naturally. With warmth. But what surprised me most? He started calling me KK. Not Casey. Not Miss Casey. Just KK. It was his own name for me. One he used every time he needed something. To show me a drawing. To find his blanket. To say goodnight. It stuck. By the time spring rolled around, he was thriving. Linda and I had worked out a routine. I still worked full-time, but I adjusted my hours. I picked him up from preschool twice a week. I took him to music class on Saturdays. I kept Band-Aids in my purse, stickers in my glove compartment, and snacks in every room of my apartment. And one day he got sick. Really sick. High fever. Vomiting. Linda was out of town for a funeral. I stayed up with him all night, cooling his forehead, giving him fluids, watching cartoons at 3 a.m. curled together on my couch. At one point he rolled over, half asleep, and mumbled, "You're my home now." It broke me. Quietly, beautifully. I didn't ask for any of this. But I was all in. The final twist came 1 year later. Linda was diagnosed with early-stage lymphoma. It was caught early, treatable, and her prognosis was good. But the doctors advised against prolonged stress or physical strain. She didn't wait to act. Within a week, she filed to transfer full legal guardianship to me. And a month after that, with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes, I signed the papers in a family court office that had once terrified me. Mason officially became my responsibility. And I became his. That night, we had pancakes for dinner. He didn't know why I cried while flipping them. He just hugged me and said, "Don't worry, KK. I got you." So, am I the Aholi for reporting my neighbor after she left her son with me and went on a date? Some people still say yes. That I should have been more patient. That I could have talked it out. That I crossed a line calling CPS. But here's what I know. When someone drops off a child and disappears without a plan, without a phone, without any care, that's not just a bad day. That's neglect. When they lie about it, spin a web of stories, break into homes and steal photos, that's danger. And when a child's safety is on the line, silence is complicity. I didn't ruin Trisha's life. I saved Mason's. And maybe, just maybe, I saved mine too.